About 34 degrees out, and I am sweating. That's why I like working outside in winter so much more than summer. I get hot really easily. Wintertime, it's as simple as shedding a layer. Being sweaty, I will cool off very fast. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today is carbon. Something I talk about a lot on this channel is obtaining different sources of carbon for use as either mulch or for soil building, for animal bedding, for composting, and you can see a little bit of that today. I'm trying to get more carbon mulch animal bedding down in this area around the chicken coop. There's some areas where you can see we've put down a lot of hay and there's been a lot of leaves before. Well, I guess this isn't a lot. We only have about an inch or so of cover here. But there's more there than there is over here where we're completely bare soil. Anyway, we still have a long ways to go in this chicken yard in terms of getting this to the state that I want it, soil-wise, cover-wise, but we're making progress. And one of the ways we've been able to do that is making use of spoiled or rotten hay. So this is not hay that we produce. This is hay that we bought from a farmer about 10 minutes away from here. I'll try to walk out and show you guys one of the bales. You can see I've been kind of spreading it in spots where it gets kind of soggy around the water, or where I throw the food waste down a lot is in this little part of the pen, so I threw some straw in there. Hay, straw, kind of different definitions, but I seem to be using those words interchangeably. Straw tends to not have seed heads, whereas hay does have seed heads in it typically. So this is one of the bales. You can see I've taken kind of the outer layer off of that one. That's how big it was before. I'm wondering if I can now shimmy this thing in through the door. It'll be easier if I can just, flip it flat and roll it around, spread it out that way instead of having to take handfuls off at a time, shuffle them through the gate. But we have been lucky out here. First of all, we have a lot of land. So if we needed to harvest hay, if we needed to create our own wood chips from woody material around here, we certainly could. We'd have to get either do a lot of manual labor or rent some equipment, to make that happen. But it could happen. But we've been lucky to get some deliveries of wood chips, even though we're in a rural area. I know some of you are very familiar with how difficult it can be to get wood chips if you're far away from a big town. Really, the best strategy for that has just been cold calling arborists. And anytime you see an arborist truck parked on the road anywhere near you doing work, just pull up, ask who's in charge, be very polite and friendly, and just say, hey, I've got a place. If you guys are able to come out and dump some chips, we'd love to have them. Okay, so as you can see, I got this bale in through the gate. A little bit windy out here. Try to face away from the wind for you guys, but as usual, I'm kind of sorting my thoughts out in the moment here. There was no real plan for this video. Actually, there really was not even a plan to come and do this level of activity today, kind of as things go, being a farmer with ADHD. I came up here with the goal in mind. I'm going to spend a few minutes. I'm going to fluff in some hay into the coop. It's not the best bedding for inside the coop, but things were getting a little mucky in here and we're out of wood chips. So I decided to just fluff a little bit of hay down until I can come in this weekend and properly muck all this stuff out. Hopefully by then we'll have some wood chips I can haul up here. Wood chips is really my preferred bedding in the coop. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you can see now we've added some hay because the chickens insist on some of them roosting up there, even though they've got multiple roosting bars. They have preferences. That's their spot. Anyway, the goal was just to do that. While I was at it, I decided to just keep rolling. I wanted to get a little bit of hay, like I said, on this back wall, just as cover. And then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to shove this whole bale in here. And so that's what we're doing. A few things of note: if you're moving hay, it's very efficient and helpful to have some sort of pitchfork or hay fork. You can move it. This stuff's lightweight. You can move a lot of it, with the pitchfork, like so. Be careful not to bury any chickens with it. You can also use it to rake up a pile. If you've got a lot of stuff on the ground, it's easier than bending over. The other thing I'll note, some of you may have noticed this already, when you're putting mulch down in the chicken yard, you don't have to spread it out super evenly. The chickens are really good at doing that. They typically enjoy spreading out mulch. I find that they're a little bit more efficient at spreading the wood chips. The hay kind of gets tangled up in itself, and it's a little bit harder for them to spread with their feet, but they will very likely spread this out nice and flat over the course of the rest of today and tomorrow. Now, what I'm going to try to do is roll this bale over onto that other side where it's needed the most. And then, of course, I'll be out of breath, and I will take a pause to talk more about whatever sorts of thoughts about carbon and mulch are on my mind. I want to talk a little bit about just this ongoing question of sourcing carbon, whether you're looking for wood chips or looking for hay or just looking for anything. I just want to kind of talk about some of the stuff that's worked for me. But let me get this bale moved and then we'll get to that. So I wish I had gotten this done a long time ago, but it still looks really good now. Glad to be doing it now. And I did do a little bit of spreading around. I'm going to let the chickens finish it off, but I just wanted that visual gratification of seeing it kind of somewhat level and flattened out. It's just pleasing to look at. Makes me feel like I did something, and I'm happy about it. And as we go over here, the chickens did not want to be anywhere near me rolling and flipping that bale. It was kind of chaotic, so they all came over here, and they're working on spreading stuff out. In this area, they're probably eating some seeds that are in here and pecking around and doing like the chickens do, So anyway, I've just had my eye out basically on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and occasionally contacting folks for hay. What I'm after is, since I'm not using this to feed ruminant animals, which is what most people are using hay for, I don't want to pay for top dollar stuff. I don't want to pay 20, 30 bucks a bale. And I got a tip from a friend that there was a farmer about 10 minutes away who had some hay that had been sitting around too long. It got wet, was starting to rot, and it's not really suitable for folks who are looking to buy it as feed. Although arguably there's a lot of dry, pretty good hay in the middle of these bales. They weren't really that far gone. But anyway, I got them for 10 bucks a bale. We picked up a few with my truck, and then the guy was nice enough to deliver a trailer load. He has a big trailer and a dually truck. So we got some up here for the chicken yard, and we've got a bunch for other gardening and annual projects on the land down near the garden, which we'll be talking about in a later video. But even if you're rural, hay is pretty easy to come by. There's lots of folks who have hay that goes bad, it gets rotten. They might be willing to let it go for pretty cheap. You can see this chicken over here taking a dust bath. And that is a pretty good if you're looking for hay for mulch or composting, animal bedding. The one thing you do want to take note of, especially if you're using this for composting or soil building, you don't want hay that was sprayed. A lot of hay is sprayed with persistent herbicides that take a very long time to break down. This guy only puts fertilizer on it, which is, not the best, but really not a huge deal compared to antibiotics of any sort, biocides, insecticides, herbicides, pesticides. I'll take fertilizer over that any day. I really don't have a big problem with the fact that the hay was fertilized, but I would not want to get hay that was sprayed with any sort of biocide. That's something you really have to be careful with in hay. But hay is a good alternative to wood chips if you're in a rural area because it's readily available and it's pretty cheap. As I mentioned, we have gotten lucky with some wood chips here on the land. That's really thanks to James doing some outreach. He was cold calling arborists, which is something that I haven't really done much here in Virginia, but in North Carolina, I did quite a bit. Was marginally successful with that. You got to make a lot of calls typically until you get somewhat, especially again, if you're in a rural area. If you're in a more suburban and urban place, there's a lot more trees over top of houses. They're coming down and those companies want to drop them off close. They don't want to drive very far with those chips because it cuts into their productivity. This is probably repeat information for a lot of you guys who have already experienced this sort of situation, but it's worth mentioning. Other than cold calls, really the thing that's worked the best for me is just keeping an eye out when I'm driving. If I'm anywhere close to home and I see a tree crew working on clearing power lines or somebody's yard or anything, I'll stop by and, just be polite, walk up, be friendly, ask typically who's in charge, and just state what you're looking for. Hey, we've got a place, we'd love to get some chips, it's close by. I can give you my phone number or get your phone number. And, if they just dismiss you, just walk away, don't cause a scene. They typically know right off the bat whether they're willing to work with you or not. And so you can just go based off their response, And make sure to be patient. If there's any sort of language barrier between you and some of the workers, that's something you'll definitely run into pretty often if you're talking to a lot of tree crews, at least in this part of the world. Not everybody speaks English, and so unless you speak whatever other language they're speaking, typically around here it's Spanish, but that's not the only language that's going on. If you don't speak other languages, just be patient. Sometimes, usually there's someone on the crew that can do a little bit of translating if you can't. But yeah, it's a constant search for basically carbon, organic matter for the soil, for the animal yard, for composting. Anytime I get an opportunity to get carbon, I try to jump on it. So this hay, for example, we don't need more than a few bales right now, but this guy had about 30 bales sitting. We bought most of them. We still have to go pick up the last load, but we bought most of them, and we're going to stockpile them here because we know we'll use them. And we're building a relationship with this farmer that, hey, we're pretty serious about. We want hay when it's of a certain quality at a certain price, and we want to make it worth his while. But anyway, I got to get back to other chores. That was just a little bit of moving hay here in the chicken yard and talking about carbon.